For years, Helen Morris cleaned the floors of a school where no one even remembered her name. She swept away broken dreams, swallowed the laughter of others, and collected silences the way some people collect scars. While the world saw her as just the janitor, she saw the world as a giant open book, only written for others to read. Between humiliation and hope, Helen carried a secret: the desire to teach, even without a degree, even without time, even without being heard. What began as a hidden gesture between buckets and brooms would soon reveal an unseen talent, a quiet faith, and a love for education that not even time could erase. And that's when everything changed. The sound of the mop gliding across the floors of Riverside High School was the prelude to dawn. Helen Morris arrived before everyone, even before the sun rose over the empty parking lot. The building still slept, and she, like a quiet ghost, moved through the hallways in her gray uniform, wearing a tired smile no one ever noticed. Each step echoed against the cold walls, carrying a silence that had long become familiar. She knew every crack in the floor, every door that creaked, every flickering light that seemed to blink just for her. The janitor, that's what they called her. No name, no story, but inside her, a secret pulsed, a simple, impossible desire to teach, to one day hear a student repeat a sentence she herself had taught. While cleaning the chalkboards, Helen would softly murmur the sentences she read in the students' notes, as if rehearsing a role that had never been hers. Once, while wiping away the white chalk from a literature class, she stopped at a phrase written by a teacher: "Knowledge is the only thing no one can ever take from you." She smiled, the rag still in her hand, and thought that maybe that was the lesson life had been trying to teach her all along. On the outside, she seemed resigned. Inside, she fought against the sting of humiliation that came when laughter echoed down the hallway, or when someone dropped something and she instinctively bent down to pick it up, unseen, unthanked. But she never responded with anger. She had learned to turn silence into strength, and loneliness into learning. The cafeteria was the only place where Helen allowed herself to daydream. While polishing the tables, she looked at the colorful posters for the school clubs: debate, theater, chess. She wanted to be in all of them, but she wasn't a student, nor a teacher, just the shadow that made the floors shine before class began. Sometimes she imagined herself there, standing before a classroom, book in hand, reciting poems she memorized while sweeping. Who would have thought even the trash could teach? She mused, thinking of the crumpled pages she secretly read. Those lost words were her secret library, a priceless treasure of knowledge no one else suspected existed. One morning, Helen was interrupted by a group of teenagers walking down the hallway laughing. "Careful not to slip, lady," one of them mocked. She smiled outwardly, but inside, it hurt, not because of the insult, but because of the familiar echo of humiliation. It was as if every laugh was a cruel reminder that the world saw her as part of the scenery, not the story. She took a deep breath and kept cleaning. Without knowing it, every sweep of her mop was also a prayer, a silent way of telling God, "I haven't given up yet." Deep down, Helen collected secrets even time couldn't erase. She wrote down phrases on tiny scraps of paper and kept them in her apron pocket. Education is the map to freedom. Words can change destinies. Being invisible isn't the same as not existing. They were reminders for herself, small pieces of faith disguised as forgotten notes. At night, in her small rented room on the outskirts of town, she would read them again and again, once, twice, 10 times, until she believed that future was still possible. And when sleep finally came, she dreamed of full classrooms, attentive voices, and eyes that, at last, truly saw her. But reality was harsh. Her paycheck barely covered rent and the basic bills. Still, she kept dropping coins into a glass jar with a handwritten label, "Future." To anyone else, it might have looked foolish, someone believing that a handful of coins could buy a great destiny. But Helen knew, every millionaire starts with an unlikely dream. And hers was the most unlikely of all. Even so, every penny she saved was a promise that one day she would stop sweeping other people's stories and start writing her own. The mornings that followed became a sacred routine. She woke up before 5, put on her gray uniform, tied her hair back, and before leaving, looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror. One day, Helen, "One day," she whispered. That phrase became her ritual, her charm against discouragement. The mirror, old and stained, reflected more than her tired face. It reflected hope. Hope that every step she took down those cold hallways brought her, even if just by a millimeter, closer to her dream. It was strange to think that even humiliation could be a staircase, as long as she had the courage to keep climbing. One day, while picking up forgotten books in the library, she found a worn-out copy of The Little Prince. The pages were aged but intact. Inside the cover, a name was scribbled, Jake Anderson. Helen flipped through the book slowly, as if touching something sacred. Between the pages, she found notes, deep reflections on friendship, pain, and purpose. "This boy thinks differently," she murmured. Without knowing it, that small encounter with Jake's name would mark the beginning of an unlikely connection, one that would forever change both their lives. That night, Helen took the book home. She read every word with attention and emotion. She cried at some parts, laughed at others. It felt as if someone had translated her own thoughts. When she finished, she wrote on the back of a sheet of paper, "Greatness sometimes begins in the forgotten places. Keep writing." She folded the paper and tucked it into her pocket. She didn't know why, but somehow, she felt that secret would find its way back to its owner. And so, between the damp cloth and the smell of disinfectant, between routine and dreams, Helen Morris unknowingly began the most important chapter of her life. A chapter born in silence, but destined to echo with the sound of a transformation that not even the cold halls of Riverside High School could erase. Among all the classrooms Helen cleaned, there was one door that always seemed to call her by the name almost no one used, Jake Anderson's. She wiped that door slowly, as if afraid to wake a rare bird, and her eyes wandered across the crooked posters, the carved-up desk, and the open notebook resting on a page that still seemed to pulse with ideas. Jake was the kind of student everyone in the halls whispered about, a walking problem, the kid who collected warnings like trading cards, the lost cause who already smelled like expulsion. But Helen saw something else. Eyes that hid a secret, a kind of rebellion that looked less like defiance and more like pain no one had ever translated. "It's not apathy," she thought. "It's a cry for help." And there, on the same floor where she had so often tasted invisible humiliation, she found a mirror, the kind that gives you questions before it gives you your reflection. That afternoon, the trash bag grew heavier when she noticed a crumpled, coffee-stained paper resting on top, like a muffled scream. Helen picked it up, gently smoothing it out with the care of a librarian. Jake's essay spoke about injustice like someone touching an old wound. It spoke about school like someone looking at a castle from the outside, knowing there's no bed for him inside. The writing was brilliant, raw, dangerous in its honesty. "If I were a millionaire," he wrote, "I'd buy silence for those who mock, and a megaphone for those who've never been heard." Helen took a deep breath. That wasn't vandalism, that was literature. A lesson written in flesh and truth. Her heart pounded with a rhythm she hadn't felt in years, one of those you recognize before you understand. "I can't let this end up in the trash," she whispered, still holding the rag in her other hand. Somewhere between wanting to protect him and fearing she'd crossed a line, an idea sparked. One of those quiet, reckless ideas only tired souls dare to try. She tucked the page inside her apron, the way someone might hide a jewel in a hem, and knew deep down that keeping this secret wasn't betrayal, it was care. That night, under the weak light of her rented room, Helen read the essay again and cried softly. "This boy burns bright, and no one sees it," she said to the cracked mirror once more. On the back of the paper, her hand trembled. "How do you write without sounding like a teacher? How do you help without crossing a line?" She thought of all the times she'd heard the janitor as a label, not a name, and decided to respond with kindness. She wrote, "You have talent. You just need to believe in yourself as much as you believe the world is unfair." She paused, reread, crossed it out, and wrote again. "Talent is a muscle, not a miracle. Keep going." At the end, she signed with nothing, no name, no trace. The strength was in remaining invisible. "If he doesn't know who I am, maybe he'll hear it better," she murmured. And as she folded the page, she understood. Sometimes, life teaches its greatest lessons from the opposite direction. The next morning, before dawn, Helen entered Jake's classroom with her usual silent steps. The trash can, her accomplice, received the sheet like a message from the future. She straightened the desks, aligned the chairs, swept up the crumbs from a day that hadn't been kind. Before leaving, she touched the lid of the trash can lightly, as if knocking on a dear neighbor's door. "It's going to work," she whispered, and walked away. In the hallway, routine awaited her with its usual load: laughter, side glances, people too busy to remember names. But inside, Hope was walking tall, wearing high heels. When the bell rang for break, Jake stormed into the room like an invader on enemy ground. He threw his backpack down, looking for anything that could make the day less unbearable, and then he saw it. The crumpled paper, now with handwriting that wasn't his. He read the first line slowly, suspicious. Then faster, angry. Who wrote this? He looked around, glared at the trash can as if it were laughing at him. "Is this a joke?" he snapped, and the kid beside him pretended not to hear. Jake crushed the page in his fist again, but stopped halfway. "Talent is a muscle, not a miracle." The words stuck to his chest. "Who do you think you are?" he muttered, but the question sounded less like an insult and more like a plea. Most of his anger, after all, was just thirst. That afternoon, old Jake did something new. He wrote another essay. Not for the teacher, not for a grade. He wrote it for the trash can. "If you really exist," it began, "prove it." He wrote about a broken family, about promises that always arrived too late, about teachers who gave up before the first "good morning." At the end, he asked, "And if I try again, who can promise I won't fail?" He folded the paper, aimed carefully, and thud, tossed that little comet of paper into the same place. Without knowing it, that moment marked the start of a silent pact, the kind that changes the route of the soul. Helen came back to the classroom that evening, when the hallways had turned into a dark ocean. She noticed the paper from the corner of her eye, but pretended not to. First, she straightened the desks, wiped the board, swept the cookie crumbs. Then, like picking up a wounded bird, she took the essay and read it leaning against the door. "If you really exist, prove it." She smiled, recognizing that kind of boldness. On the back, she wrote her reply. "Proof shows up when someone keeps showing up. Writing is persistence." Then she dared a little more. "Anger is fire. In you, it could be an oven, turning raw dough into bread." She placed the sheet back in the trash can, at an angle only the two of them would understand. Their secret was growing, like a plant being watered in the dark. In the days that followed, their dance continued. Jake wrote with more courage. Helen replied with more precision. "You criticize well. Now feel more. You feel deeply. Now show it better. Small, yeah, but why?" From one side, and because it works, from the other. Their tone shifted between scolding and embrace, and the lesson slipped in through the cracks. Helen, long used to the humiliation of invisibility, discovered a new kind of power: to guide without being seen, to light a fire without stepping on stage. "Who told you that you can't?" she nudged between the lines. "Everyone," his words seemed to answer. "Then keep writing until that everyone starts to shrink." One rainy morning, Jake burst into the classroom earlier than usual. "Who are you?" he asked the air, not expecting an answer. "I know this isn't a joke." He tapped the trash can, frowned, but his eyes were glowing. "You don't get it," he said softly. "I'm not good enough." The sentence echoed like a gunshot down the empty hall. Outside, Helen froze mid-mop, her body recognizing the sound before her mind did. She didn't enter. She didn't break the pact. She just closed her eyes and silently answered, "I used to think that too." That afternoon, her reply was short and sharp. "Good enough is a daily drill. Be a millionaire in attempts, penny by penny." Slowly, Jake's classroom became a secret workshop. He brought in lyrics, movie quotes, childhood memories. Helen pointed out weak verbs, worn-out images, lazy lines written half asleep. Replace "sad" with a scene. Show the rain in the kitchen, your mother's voice down the hall. When he nailed it, she applauded in pocket-sized sentences. When he missed, she corrected without cruelty. The lessons were a dance, one step forward, half a step back, then another full one ahead. And while the world kept calling Helen, the janitor, a new identity was quietly taking shape, that of someone who knew how to lift people up. One night, Helen ended her response with a hidden invitation. "Sign up for the state writing contest. You've got a shot." Jake laughed out loud, one of those laughs that scare away ghosts. "Me? A contest?" He paced, bit the cap of his pen, tore 2 pages out of sheer nerves. "If I lose, I'll be a joke." Then, almost by surprise, he scribbled on the back, "And what if I win?" Fear and boldness stared each other down like 2 fighters in a ring. By the time he lay down that night, there was a new noise in his chest, the sound that always comes before something important begins. The next day, the trash can received the longest essay yet. It had fury and tenderness, streets and libraries, scars and futures. Helen read it slowly, savoring the metaphors like fresh bread. Then she wrote, "Now, refine it. Less shouting, more rhythm." And for the first time, she dared to include a tiny dialogue hidden at the end. "Do you really think I can?" "I think you already are." Jake replied with 3 words that didn't sound like the old him. "I will try." And it was in that, "I'll try," that something shifted, like the turning of an old doorknob no one believed would ever open again. The rumor started small, like a hallway whisper. Someone said Jake Anderson was different. No one could quite explain it, but the troublemaker was now sitting in the front row, turning in his assignments early, and, strangest of all, smiling from time to time. Teachers, long used to his indifference, exchanged curious looks. "Do you think he's in love?" they joked. But no one guessed the truth, that his heart was secretly tied to a trash can. The same trash can that, without knowing it, was hiding a secret powerful enough to change destinies. Inside it, among crumpled papers and half-eaten sandwiches, bloomed the beginning of a silent revolution, a janitor and a student quietly rebuilding each other without ever meeting face to face. Helen went about her days as always, mop, bucket, rag, silence. But inside, something had begun to bloom. She moved lighter now, as if every word she wrote to Jake cleaned a stain off her own soul. It was strange. The more she helped him, the more she realized she was healing too. Maybe that's what teaching really is, she thought. Being a bridge without needing to cross it. At night, she reread their exchanges and felt a pride that couldn't fit in her chest, the kind that spills out as quiet tears. Even so, the secret was heavy. What if they found out? What if they laughed? What if humiliation came again, disguised as a joke? Still, she kept going. Because sometimes, courage is just fear that keeps walking forward. Jake, on the other hand, was going through a metamorphosis no one understood. The woman's unseen words echoed in his mind at the strangest moments. When he went to sleep, he remembered, "Anger is fire. In you, it could be an oven." When he woke up, proof appears when someone insists. It was like having a secret teacher living in his chest, a voice both firm and gentle, pushing him forward. The boy who used to mock books was now seen with a pen in hand and eyes full of focus. "You sick or something, Anderson?" a classmate teased. He just smiled. "Maybe I'm cured." And that line, which sounded like a joke, was in fact a lesson. One afternoon, the principal called him into her office. "Jake, I hear you've changed." He crossed his arms, defensive. "Changed is bad." She laughed. "No, it's great. I just want to understand why." Jake shrugged. "Sometimes, someone makes you see what you couldn't before." "And who would that someone be?" He hesitated. "I don't know. Just someone who listens, even without being here." The principal watched him leave, puzzled. Down the hall, Helen was sweeping. She caught only a distant echo of their conversation. Without looking up, she smiled. Without knowing it, she thought, his lesson has already begun. Days turned into weeks, and the ritual continued. Jake wrote, Helen replied. The content was so full of life it seemed to spill through the school walls. He wrote about guilt, she answered with hope. He confessed the ache of an absent father, she spoke of forgiveness. You write to heal others, but it's you who gets healed first, she once wrote. Jake replied, then maybe you're more of a doctor than a teacher. That night, Helen cried, because no one had ever called her anything more than the janitor. And right there, between tears and ink, she realized the power of a simple "you are." Jake's transformation didn't go unnoticed. His literature teacher stopped him after class. Can I read your latest essay to the class? His eyes widened. Seriously? Seriously? And so, while the class listened, the text that had once started in a trash can now echoed like a manifesto. It spoke of injustice, empathy, and faith. When she finished reading, no one laughed. Not the bully in the back, not the popular girls. Only silence, the kind that's heavy and freeing at the same time. And at the back of the room, Helen was mopping the floor, pretending not to hear, but her heart was dancing like a child. The buzz grew louder. The principal mentioned him, the teachers discussed him, and soon someone suggested Jake enter the state writing contest. He's got raw talent, they said. But he came from nowhere, others murmured. Jake, torn between pride and fear, sought comfort in his old ally, the trash can. They want me to compete. What if I lose? He wrote. Helen replied the next night. Those who lose while trying are already winning. The richest are the ones who bet on themselves when everyone else doubts them. And that was the sentence that made him fill out the registration form. The whole world suddenly felt smaller, and his dream finally fit inside his chest. Helen followed everything from afar. She cleaned Jake's classroom like someone tending an altar. Every book on his desk, every half-finished draft, proof of progress. He's going to make it, she whispered, though fear still circled her. If they found out a janitor had meddled in academic affairs, the humiliation would crush her. And yet, another voice inside whispered, what if this is my chance to prove I'm more than a uniform? The secret was both burden and flame, and she no longer knew if she kept it out of fear or love. As the contest drew near, Jake wrote as if scripting his own destiny. His essays carried depth, emotion, and a glow he couldn't explain. It's like I'm not writing alone, he told a friend. Like there's someone inside me helping. The friend laughed. What, like a ghost? Something like that. Helen, somewhere down the hall, laughed too, because in a way, she was a ghost. Not the kind that haunts, but the kind that guides. And between one response and the next, she began to realize, maybe that boy was saving her, too. The day before the contest, Helen woke before the alarm. Her heart raced, her hands trembled. She ironed her uniform, tied her hair, and left in silence. On her way, she thought of everything, the laughter she'd swallowed, the time she'd felt invisible, the small victories no one ever noticed. Today, he's going to shine, she whispered. And maybe, just maybe, the world will see that even humiliation can raise a teacher. When she arrived at the school, she saw Jake in the hallway, head high, a quiet smile on his face. He walked past her and, without knowing, nodded. It was a small gesture, but to Helen, it was enough. The secret was about to reveal itself, and nothing would ever be the same. The Riverside High School auditorium had never been so full. Parents, students, teachers, and administrators filled the seats, buzzing with excitement for the results of the state writing contest. Jake Anderson was one of the finalists. On stage, the lights reflected nervous faces and sweaty palms. In the back, among mops and buckets, Helen Morris watched from the shadows, gray uniform, heart pounding. She pretended to clean, but her hands were shaking. The secret she'd carried for months pulsed inside her like a second heartbeat. If he wins, she thought, my silence will be worth 1,000 words. Without realizing it, life was about to turn an ordinary day into an unforgettable scene. The announcer began. 3rd place. 2nd place. The crowd cheered. When Jake's name echoed as the winner, time froze. He widened his eyes, covered his mouth, stunned. Then the audience erupted in applause. Helen stepped back, steadying herself against the wall. "He did it," she whispered, tears escaping before she could stop them. But the real surprise was yet to come. Called to the stage, Jake walked up trembling, the winning essay in his hands. His voice cracked at first, then steadied. I didn't expect this." A hush fell over the room. Jake looked out at the crowd, took a breath, and continued. "I used to think no one saw me, that the world had given up on me. Until one day, someone the world ignores made me believe again." The audience exchanged puzzled looks. Helen felt the floor vanish beneath her feet. "No, Jake, not now," she thought, clutching her cloth. "That person never told me their name, never asked for anything in return," Jake went on. "But they taught me more than any teacher ever could. That faith is when someone believes in you before you can believe in yourself." The word lesson rang through the air like invisible bells. The whispers began. Who could it be? A teacher? A friend? Jake took a deep breath and smiled. No, it was someone you all saw, but no one ever really saw. At that moment, he turned toward the back of the auditorium, toward the corner where Helen was trying to hide behind a stack of folded chairs. It was her. His finger pointed, and time stopped. Every head turned in the same direction. Helen froze, her bucket still dripping water onto the floor. For a second, she wished she could disappear, but there was no escaping now. The secret had revealed itself, and the whole world could finally see her. The applause began timidly, then swelled like a wave. Teachers stood, students clapped, parents wiped their tears. Helen covered her face with both hands, unable to hold back the crying. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered, but no one heard. Jake stepped down from the stage and walked toward her. "Yes, you did." He smiled, his eyes shining. "You taught me what it means to believe. That's the greatest lesson of all." Helen tried to speak, but her voice failed. She simply nodded through tears, feeling the sweet weight of gratitude. The principal approached, still in shock. "Helen, was it you?" She just smiled, unable to deny it. "I only wanted to help him not give up." The principal wiped her eyes. "You did more than that. You gave this school its meaning back." For the first time, someone called her by her full name, not the janitor. And for Helen, that was worth more than any trophy. "It seems I learned something too," she said softly. "What did you learn?" asked the principal. "That teaching is giving hope, even when you barely have any." That afternoon became a legend, the day the entire school learned that heroism can wear rubber gloves. Helen was invited to the stage, her hands trembling, and Jake handed her the trophy he had just received. "Half of this belongs to you," he said. "I can't accept that." "Yes, you can." "But I'm not a teacher." Jake smiled. "You are. You just don't have the diploma yet." The audience laughed through tears, their applause filling the hall. For a few precious seconds, even Helen's long years of humiliation seemed to melt away. Within hours, the story spread across town. "Janitor inspires student to win state essay contest," shouted the next day's local newspaper. Classmates who used to walk past her without a glance now greeted her with respect. "Good morning, Miss Helen," they said, and she smiled, unsure whether to laugh or cry. The old shame was gone, replaced by something new, recognition. Deep down, Helen understood. The real prize wasn't the trophy, but the way people looked at her now. A look that finally said, "We see you." Jake received invitations for interviews, lectures, and magazine stories. But in every one of them, he repeated the same name, Helen Morris. "Did she change your life?" they asked. "No," he replied calmly. "She taught me how to change my own." Each of his sentences became an echo of gratitude. When a company offered him money to appear in an ad campaign, he refused. "Some secrets aren't for sale," he said, "and some stories are worth more than any prize." The reporter smiled. "You learn fast." He answered, "I had the best teacher there is." Helen returned to work the following Monday. Bucket, broom, smile, same tools, new light. Something had changed in the way the world saw her. Greetings were genuine now, doors opened, smiles lingered. She was still cleaning the same hallways, but somehow they looked golden. Every step she took carried the quiet sound of victory. She knew the story didn't end there. Something greater was on the way. There were invitations, promises, opportunities knocking. And deep in her heart, she knew the lesson was only beginning. The story spread faster than the school bell at recess. First, it hit the local paper, then the city radio. Within a week, it was on regional websites and family group chats. Janitor changes the life of rebellious student. The headlines bloomed everywhere. It sounded like fiction, but it was made of flesh, tears, and conquered humiliation. Then came what no one expected, a knock at Helen's door. It was from an NGO. "We have a scholarship," they said, "for those who teach before they have a degree." Helen stood speechless, her hands still smelling of disinfectant and courage. "Me? A teacher? I just helped a boy not to give up." "That's exactly why," they said, offering her a future wrapped in faith. She took a deep breath and accepted, her heart running a marathon. The broom that had followed her for years was now a symbol, not a sentence. The secret that had kept her alive in the dark now walked tall in the light. And the town, without realizing it, was learning something too, that hope is a verb you live. Hard nights came, pages filled with notes, exams that felt like mountains. Helen became a student again, hungry in a way only those who have waited a lifetime can be. She studied theories, methods, teaching practice, but she carried from her old school the best lesson of all. Without listening, there is no teaching. Every semester was a small victory wrapped like a gift. She worked by day, studied by night, cooked between assignments. She saved coffee coins like someone collecting sunrises. "One day, Helen, one day," she still whispered to the mirror. And now, clean and whole, the mirror reflected a woman complete. There were stumbles, exhaustion that reached the soul, but never quitting. And that made all the difference. When her report card arrived stamped academic excellence, she cried quietly. She remembered every laugh that once carried the scent of humiliation. And she smiled, because crooked laughter becomes table support when the table is solid. The future, finally, fit in the pocket of her apron. Years stacked into diplomas, and diplomas opened horizons. Helen interned, tutored, helped the very teachers who once helped her. In every classroom, she left behind a piece of a story that needed no trophy. "I don't want fame," she said. "I want tools." She understood that teaching methods are bridges, and bridges need human pillars. That lessons aren't memorized, they're hands reaching out when the night gets heavy. She turned her old humiliations into pages of a practical guidebook. Write what burns. Read what cools you. Rewrite what heals. Her notebook became part recipe, part poem. At the bottom of each page, she always wrote the same reminder. No one learns alone. Her classmates teased her for her gentle perfectionism. "Helen, breathe," they laughed. She smiled, adjusted a comma like someone fluffing a pillow, and kept going. When the time came for her greatest leap, it didn't feel like a miracle. Because it wasn't, it was mileage. Miles of faith that refused to die. And the secret that had always guided her had a simple name: love for others. When the email from Riverside arrived, the world seemed to turn back on its axis. Position open, literature teacher, Riverside High School. The name Riverside High School shone on her screen like a lighthouse in an old harbor. Helen took a breath, closed her eyes, and clicked Submit Application. Her resume carried the light weight of truth. It carried the invisible trophy from that day in the auditorium, the day of applause. It carried the scars of humiliation, now transformed into teaching method. The interview took place in a room she had once mopped. "Why do you want to work here, Helen?" "Because I've always been here. I just never had the chalk." Silence. A smile. A handshake that felt like an embrace. 2 days later, The phone rang. No dramatic pause, no suspense. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Morris." She sat on the edge of her bed and cried the kind of tears that had been waiting for years. The secret finally had a badge. First day of class. The same hallway she once knew with her eyes closed. The same doors, cracks, flickering lights, all familiar, yet everything had changed. On her desk, a bundle of handwritten welcome notes from students. "Teacher, I've heard about you since Jake's contest. Teacher, my essays always end up in the trash. Can you help me?" Helen smiled and pulled from her pocket an old, precious habit. She handed each student a small card with an anchor phrase. "Talent is a muscle, not a miracle, with a tiny heart. Anger is fire. In you, it can be an oven," with a smile drawn in the corner. Proof appears when someone insists, with steady eye contact. The classroom seemed to exhale, as if everyone had found shelter from a storm. And Helen realized, the lesson she once gave Jake was now meant for many. Her past humiliation had become a first aid kit. Her professional secret? Listen before you teach. And teach as if giving someone their name back. Among the desks, a boy in a hoodie avoided eye contact. Head down, notebook closed, lips chewing on doubt. Helen recognized that silence, like meeting an old friend. She approached quietly, no spotlight, no ready-made formula. "What's your name?" "Darren." "Darren, no one here is a problem. We just arrive tired sometimes." He looked up, half curious, half wary. "I'm not good enough." "Neither was I. Until I started training like a millionaire does, every single day." The corner of his mouth tried to smile, but hesitated. Helen slipped a small note into his notebook. "Write a memory with a smell and a sound." Next class, Darren's story had sizzling pans and rain on a tin roof. And the whole class learned that sensitivity, too, is a muscle that can grow. In the halls, her old cleaning colleagues came to hug her. "You opened a door for us," said Rosa, holding Helen's hand tightly. "Now when they say, 'the janitor,' I hear the hero inside me." Helen's eyes filled with tears, no longer afraid of seeming fragile. Because she had learned that fragility is the road to connection. She started a writing club open to both students and staff. Cafeteria ladies came. Custodians came. Shy souls of all kinds came. Each brought a story, a laugh, a wound with an address. "Writing gives feelings their ID," Helen said gently. The lesson crossed walls. No one was left out of words. And her past humiliation became wisdom, not bitterness. "Who cleans floors also cleans trauma," she joked, and everyone understood. The club's secret? Fresh coffee, deep listening, soft light. The rest, literature took care of. And the school, without realizing it, grew bigger on the inside. One afternoon, Jake returned to Riverside to visit his old mentor. Now he spoke at conferences, wrote for newspapers, he taught, too. "Teacher, I came to return something that's yours." He held up an envelope with a photo of the old trophy. "Half of it was always yours, but today, you don't need half of anything." They laughed together, remembering the trash can that had become a library. "You know what the biggest lesson was, Jake?" "What?" "That no one saves anyone alone, we just light each other's candles." He nodded, eyes wet, looking at the room full of attentive young faces. "So who's the next person you'll light up?" Hands shot up, ideas sparked, and the room turned into a bonfire. Helen understood, that was it, her entire life's work in one question. Her secret was safe now, handed over to the future, in many hands. And the word millionaire no longer meant money, it meant an abundance of voice. Today, the classroom she once cleaned shines with a different light. It's not polish, it's purpose, reflecting in curious eyes. There are posters of authors, metaphor maps, and walls covered with microstories. On the door, a simple sign reads, "Here, no one is invisible." Students walk in as if arriving home after a long day. They leave as if finding one-way tickets in their own pockets. When someone says, "I'm not good enough," Helen doesn't correct, she invites. Prove it to yourself in 10 lines. And 10 new worlds are born where once there was only defeat. Humiliation loses weight when words gain strength. The secret isn't magic, it's care, practiced with method. And the greatest lesson remains the same. Stay. Stay close, stay kind, stay until the light appears. And so, the whole school learns how to learn. Because, without knowing it, everyone had been waiting for Helen. If this story spoke to you, be part of the chain. Like the video so others can find this embrace. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next stories. Comment below where you're watching from. I want to read you. Your interaction helps other Helens find their Jakes out there. Every like is a push against the silence of humiliation. Every subscription is a "we're in this together" that's worth more than any algorithm. Let's spread this lesson the way we light candles on a cold night. Your comment might be the secret another heart needs today. And who knows, maybe you'll inspire someone's next millionaire turnaround. Share this with someone who needs courage to try again. Tag that friend who writes but doesn't believe in their own words yet. Bring people into the club of healing words. The story doesn't end here, it just changes hands. See you in the next chapter.